this was kind of my tomato crop. I had tomatoes on the ground, tried to kind of stake them up, but that year, just disease and bugs, and every time I'd have a ripe tomato, I'd go pick it up, there'd either be bugs in it or it'd be rotten, and I thought, it just bothered me that I'd gone to all that work hoping to can some tomato products, and nothing. I got this photo off the web, but I got both of those off the web.
It's our goal.
Yeah, it's probably a greenhouse of some type. One of the main advantages to getting the tomatoes up is you get airflow through them and they don't stay wet as long, and your fruit is not down on the ground and you don't have as many diseases. So that was one of the things, like, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start, and I did the first two, and every year, well, for about the next 3 years I would add, and then I'd have less garden out on the ground and more garden in the raised beds. The first thing I tell you is there is all types of designs, ways you can do it. There's not one set format for raised beds. These are some photos I picked up along the way. I'll show you how I made mine. There's some really nice ones that are made with like rock, and there's more simple ones where you just take straw bales and set them up in a square, fill it up with dirt, and then that's your raised bed. Another thing you can do is just take some tires, put like 2 tires on top of them, each other, fill it with dirt, you have a raised bed. It can be as sophisticated as you want, very well planned out. You know, obviously this one here is symmetrical and just everything looks nice, not a weed in it. That's the thing I'd tell you is you can start kind of slow, just try it for a while, and then you can add to it and see what you think works for you. The advantages to raised beds. The big thing for me is less disease pressure, because you've got more airflow going through the things in raised beds. It's easier to hold things up with a raised bed. Oops. Not as much stooping. I see there's a lot of gray hairs. And it's nice because you can either, mine are about table height here, so you can go along and pick, or sometimes when I'm weeding, I'll just get down on my knees and I can just go right along, and they're right there at the right height. Soil dries out quicker. That's a plus and that's a minus. If you get through a wet spell or something where the moisture tends to seep away. And you can work sooner after rain. Mine, I just have grass growing between them. So like tonight, if I wanted to go out and pull weeds, I could stand on the grass and pull the weeds. Conventional garden, you gotta wait till it kind of dries out, otherwise you're really packing the soil. So. I'm going to go into how I designed mine. Got 2x12 boards, and I cut 2 foot off, and then I bolted angle iron brackets on them. And then I bolted the ends on the end of the boards. So these boards were originally 20 foot long. That's just the length I chose. You can use whatever length you want. And then this is with the sides, and then I use some ready thread right in the middle here to make sure that they'll stay the same width. I've used 2 foot width, and I've used 18-inch width. Either one works. It's kind of preference. The thing I like, some of them have like 4 foot wide. Well, then you're kind of reaching over a lot. I like it a little narrower because then you don't have to reach so far. So, any questions so far? Yeah, Willie?
Those are 2 by 12s, you're saying?
Yeah.
So they're 24 foot, 24 inches high?
Yeah, 22 and a half, or yeah, basically.
Okay, and they're 2 foot wide then, right? I mean, between the two,
Yes,
the two boards is, so it's,
Yep.
okay.
It's not treated wood either, is it?
This is, but a lot of people wouldn't use it just for fear of they get the treatment in the plants, so that's personal preference. So, yep, do either one. This is my daughter-in-law. I've got rhubarb, asparagus, and horseradish in raised beds, and this particular one is only a foot tall. And I really like them for the perennials because you have a very defined space, and you just go along and pull the weeds on anything that's there. And of course, rhubarb just goes all over. But then anything that's outside the boards where I have the raised bed, like if asparagus wanders out, comes out, I don't worry about it. I just cut it off. Or the nice thing too is you can just take the weed eater, go right around the edge, trim it up really nice, looks nice. And we planted some rhubarb that day, and we did that one. Disadvantages, they can be kind of expensive. What we've been talking about, the one I made for my son and daughter-in-law this spring, with the wood, the bolts, and the angle iron, it's about $275. So that's why, as you're thinking about it, well, I didn't do them all the first year. I did a couple, so I like this, added to it every year. So it takes some time to build. I've done it enough that 3-4 hours I can have it built. It's not prohibitive in the amount of time, but it does cost money. It takes about, that one that I built for my family, about 2 pickup loads of dirt. I put a load of manure in the bottom and then a load of dirt on top. So it's going to take, you're going to have a source for that stuff. More watering, like I said, it's an advantage and disadvantage is it'll tend to dry out quicker. And last year I bought some soaker hoses and rolled them out. And what I would do is when I got home from work, I'd turn them on and then set the timer for 2 hours and then come back out and shut it off, or otherwise I'd forget and it'd run all night. And that seemed to work pretty good. And then just whenever I thought they were dry, I'd just turn it on and let it drip. And, one of the reasons I did it that way is I was trying not to get water on the leaves on the plants to keep the disease down. Weeds do grow on them. All the pictures that I looked at on the internet, you know, they were just weed-free. Wow. Yeah, they grow. So, any questions here? Or got a few things. Okay. Just some helpful hints. That's a load of manure again. I put manure on the bottom, and I just don't want fertility to be a problem. So, talk to one of the local farmers. I haven't had any problem finding manure. It's out there. Then after the manure, I like to put soil, foot to 18 inches. And if you've got some organic matter or compost or something to kind of mix it in there, just so you have good filtration. Basically, you're making your own soil so you can make it however you want. The other thing that I do too, I've done, is get a little bit of sand for that top layer. So hopefully that top 2 inches has a little higher sand content. There's a couple reasons for that. Is when you plant something, you're less likely to crust. just because you got more sand. And it's a little easier to pull the weeds, a little easier to, when you're scratching around, just to, if it's just a little sandier soil, things just move around a little quicker, so. That's kind of personal preference, just something I do.
You mix the sand and the soil together?
Yep. So hopefully that top, 1 to 2 inches is kind of a sandy loam, so, but the richer soil's underneath. Yep. Yeah, top, I said a third sand, I don't know, just so it's sandy. I went out to the cement plant out here, and I asked for some sand, and they just dumped some in the pickup, and I don't know, they charged me $5–10, whatever. It was a pretty nominal fee, but they were pretty good about it. I just called out there and said I wanted some sand for my garden, and not a problem, so they're pretty good to work with. This is up here at Asgrow here in town, probably a lot of you have seen it, and this is something, there's a lot of different variations. We put cucumbers and tomatoes, and the cucumbers will pretty much just find their own way up there, and it gets them up. The nice thing about cucumbers, if you have them growing vertically, they'll grow very straight, and you'll have a lot of nice, straight, attractive looking cucumbers. And if you have cucumber on the ground, oftentimes the bottom will be kind of yellowish or tan or off color. If you get them to grow vertically, they'll just be green all the way around. So a little more attractive. Nutrition-wise, probably not a whole lot different. They eat good, but just something to do. Tomatoes, I use zip ties when they're starting to grow up. Not real tight, just so that they're close there, and then kind of thread about every week, 10 days, just make sure the plants are kind of threading their way up through these are just cattle panels that I cut in half, and they're not tied down in any way, they're just push them down in the ground, and they're tied up at the top with just some baling wire, so it's pretty simple design. And probably in the fall when you go to pull tomatoes off, that's the hardest part, because they kind of wound their way up through, and you got to be a little patient, and tug and pull and everything else. So. Probably the biggest thing is initial cost, initial effort. It takes time, takes some money. More watering. I do like the soaker hose. I've done it a couple different ways. The soaker hose is the easiest to do. Less disease. That's how I started. That's why I considered doing this. Hopefully I can get more fruit for less effort is the plan. And hopefully easier to harvest, because obviously if you're just picking cucumbers or tomatoes at that height, why you can see them. You see what you got. It's right there. Any questions? Yeah, Willie.
Are those the only two vegetables you grow, or tomatoes and cucumbers?
Down here.
Can you grow other vegetables besides those two?
Yeah, I've got, I've done green beans,